a lovely coffee out on the deck on a very sunny day. Yeah, I'm gonna admit it was probably wishful thinking for me to be able to find beer over in the shrubs right now, because it is a little bit after 9 o'clock and it is kind of early to start being drinking again. Unless, of course, you're one of those neighbors that likes to drink Coors Light at 11 a.m. Just because, but that's not my style. You know I like high quality stuff. And also just wanted to check out the garden. As you've been following me for a while, you probably knew that I love to plant. It's something I always used to do, helping my parents growing up as a kid, and it's kind of nice to be able to have my own place with my own garden and lots of stuff I could put together. I got, in terms of the potted stuff, some of my favorites. Dahlias, geraniums, osteoparium, which almost sounds like borderline osteoporosis, and a red lavender plant. My lavender from last year had kind of died out somehow, so I was able to get a new one planted there, hope for the best. And I'm kind of hoping that the other one that was almost dying, I did see some leaves, so I planted it in the ground, trying a little mad science experiment to see if it's going to actually regenerate. If it does, great, and if not, well, you know, at least it was something I tried to do. And then on that note, welcome to another edition of the Wananyuki Cheese Cafe. So as I'm recording this, it is currently Victoria Day. We got the Monday off, so I'm just enjoying and making the most of it, because the beauty of a long weekend is that you have an extra day to do whatever you need to do. Whether it's chores in the house, a bit of gardening, you want to enjoy yourself, it's all well and good. I was blessed with some good weather, minus a few spurts of rain that happened over the weekend, but besides that, everything is nice. And Victoria Day weekends also, like you probably saw, when I get my gardening done, because typically that's around the time when you know there's not going to be any frost, there's never going to be, you know, last minute snow falling, so you're kind of safe to plant. In terms of what I have in my vegetable garden, I got lettuce, tomato, peppers, experimenting with an eggplant, zucchini, cucumbers, and we'll see how that goes. Oh yes, I'm doing some jalapenos once again, because once again, I love using those for jambalayas. And if you want, I know I mentioned this on my St. Ambroise tour, but click the link on the top right corner to see me do a jambalaya from start to finish, because that was amazing. And I have in my herb garden a lot of mint and a Greek basil, not a Greek basil, a Greek oregano plant that I did like a few years ago that somehow regrew like a perennial, and it's becoming really invasive and it's taking over, it's like it's trying to take over the world. But that's probably a story for another time. Important thing is that today is also the day where I've actually reached 150 subs on the channel. So this is going to be a little thank you to everyone who's been following me for the last 2.5 years, and longer than that if you've been following me before YouTube became official. So thanks everyone for your support. I'll have a little toast with you. Nice touch. So what I'm going to be doing today, it's actually going to be a multi-fold episode. I have I'm losing my words right now. Apparently this coffee isn't kicking in as well. So I have a sirloin roast that's in the fridge that I'm going to have to cook. I also have an idea for a meal to do later on today, because I've mentioned poke bowls a lot in the past, and after looking it up and after debating a while, I figured I want to do one from scratch at home. That way I could show you it's really easy to do and very customizable and simple, also very healthy too, with just a few precautions that you need to take. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and all in between there's going to be a little bit of a wander happening around too. So it won't just be sticking around home, I'll be on the streets somewhere. Where I go, I'm going to make it up as I go along. So we're going to get to this, but before I continue further, I'm just going to give you one more suggestion. Click that subscribe button below. Put your notification bell to on, so that whenever I put in a new episode, you're gonna get a pop-up that's ready to view. And obviously too, when you're watching, give the video a thumbs up, hit that like button below, because the more likes I get on this channel, the more my videos are promoted in the recommended videos down the road. And I think the only one that's really getting recommended so far is my dryer vent replacement video. That's like, I can't believe that one actually picked up of all things. But I'd rather have that than a Molson Dry video being the number one. And my coffee is all done right now. I've had my time in the sun, looked at the garden, so now it's time to prepare my little roast. Now, sirloin is something I've seen a lot when I was growing up. I think I've seen like sirloin tip steak that you could get in the grocery stores, or you could also get it as a roast, because it's one of those things that you could get like whole or then slice up and then you make little steaks. It could be tasty, and what I've seen before is that some roasts, depending on how you cook it, could be a little bit chewy once it's all done, but there is a way to make it really tender here. Just like any kind of meat, slow cooking it is the key. But before we do that, I'm gonna have to put together a little spice rub for myself. So let's see. Some people would say you just need to sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper on it, which could be true, but then other times you can actually be a little bit more creative and add a bit more pizzazz. I've seen a few recipes for this, but I went for this one particularly, or partially, because it was explaining how to do a roast on the barbecue, and it gave me a few good seasonings that I already have in my pantry. Problem is that if you want to do roast on the barbecue, there is a bit of prep time where you need to marinate for a bit, and you also need to use indirect heat with a drip pan. I'm sure I could whip all that together if I had a chance, but for all intents and purposes, I want to do it this way. So first ingredient I'm going to be using is thyme. You just get maybe around 2 teaspoons worth of dried thyme, and then you add it to a small mixing bowl, just like this. There, we're at thyme. Yeah, I was thinking maybe I was going to get a Sonic the Hedgehog or a Mario reference, but Back to the Future, also an awesome reference. Thyme is actually one of those seasonings that it works well with a lot of meats. Like, it's very versatile. And I know there's like pairing guides that you can find elsewhere, like in cookbooks, on the internet. I'm still not as well versed on which goes good with what, but eventually I could do maybe an episode to see like what it is. Yeah, lost my words for a second. Feel like this is one of those days where I'm not going to be speaking as well. So next, I'm going to be doing 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. And, ooh, what luck. I was kind of worried that I was going to be out of this, but luckily, I seem to have had just the right amount to put in here from this bag. So I'm going to have to restock that eventually. Okay, next, black pepper. I think I saw my recipe said maybe a teaspoon worth, but I'm going to go like in between like half a teaspoon, 3/4 of a teaspoon, just because I don't want to have it too overpoweringly hot. Makes me think back to being a kid once, going through my parents' spice rack, opening up a bag of pepper, and then for some reason I thought, I gotta sniff that thing. And I do recall that later on in the evening, I wanted to go up to them to say I wanted to read a story. I opened up a book, but all I really had was a sneeze coming up. So I sneezed and then said, "The end." It gave them a good laugh, but I did not prepare for that. Yeah, 9-year-old me, I think, they did some pretty dorky things. Anyways, my pepper is in here. Next ingredient then is going to be some salt. And this I'm going to do about 1 teaspoon worth to go along with it all. Yeah, 1 teaspoon with this should blend it well. The recipe that I did find said that you could use like a tablespoon of salt to go with all these dry seasonings. And I thought they were kind of crazy because when you really think about it, this is like maybe 2-3 pounds worth of roast. That's a lot of salt on a small piece of cow. I wouldn't want to overdo it. Yeah, I had to thaw it out because it was in the freezer and want to take it, so that's why I see all these juices. It should still be good. But we're going to get to that in a second, because next thing I want to do is just blend in all of my seasonings together so it's a bit more consistent for when I apply it on. Man, I'm so used to using paprika for these dry rubs, because that seems to blend everything else together just as well. Or, I have another idea. We're back. So, I got my mortar here, or is it a pestle? Because I feel like a mortar and pestle is your best way to get these dry rubs together, because what it does is instead of just mixing everything together, it actually grinds it up and then becomes a bit more of a powdery consistency. So it's pretty good with things like thyme, coriander, rosemary, especially rosemary, because those grains could sometimes get stuck between your teeth. So by grinding it up like this, it actually makes it a little bit easier on you. Easier on the esophagus, easier on the tongue, and etc. Your digestive system will thank you later. There. So this is all blended together here. And, oh, seem to have a little bit of a sprig here. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this aside, and then I'm going to get my meat all prepared. As you can see, I like to have a clean surface as much as possible whenever I'm working with this kind of meat. Because I always feel like if I have, whoop, almost lost a glove. I feel like if I have something covering this up, then that's a little less cleanup for me to have to do and less disinfecting. So I have plastic wrap here. I'm getting out my piece of meat. It smells good. I was afraid that maybe it wasn't smelling as good, so if it doesn't, then you probably got rancid meat there that has to be thrown out. There's usually a telltale sign that's going bad, so don't worry about it. So got the roast here. There's always this piece of rope that they leave on this. I don't understand why they do that. Anyways, next thing I'm going to want to do is put a little bit of a dab of olive oil here. There, so like the equivalent of a teaspoon, and then you're fine. And then you just rub it along with your meat here. So what this is going to do is it's going to allow the spice rub that you have to bond together, like stick to the meat. Just kind of a way to kind of hold it all in. So just like so. Then what you could do is sprinkle it lightly. Just like this. You can feel free to spread it out if necessary too. There we go. Then give it a little bit of a flip. Seems like that the garlic is going on one side more so than the thyme on the other, but that's fine. It's going to give you a consistent taste. You're most likely going to be doing the top and the bottom, but I suppose if you're adventurous enough, you can take a little bit of the spice rub here and then rub it on the side of your meat as much as possible. Actually, I'm just going to do this instead. There. So it's able to stick around a little bit here. Obviously, it's not going to be 100% perfect though. But it's as good as it's gonna get. There you go. Now this is your spicy little piece of meat. Yeah, that's a very funny trophy. But this isn't a meatball. Meatballs I may have to do one of these days if I get adventurous, and especially if I want to do, let's say, Italian wedding soup, because that's an awesome soup to make. So the next step before you put in the slow cooker is to brown it up. So I have this frying pan over here. It's like a pretty cheap price over at IKEA, and it's very serviceable. You don't need anything too fancy, so if you want something that's Teflon and affordable, this is a good way to go. Some people stick with stoneware, because that seems to be a lot these days, like people use it a lot. But I'm not gonna spend too much. I try to do some cooking on a budget. So I might have covered this before when I was doing pork tenderloin roasts in the past, or also roasts. And actually, there's a link to the top right corner for you to watch that, because it gives you a good explanation on the process with this, and also very similar idea for the dry rub, because I did make reference to paprika earlier in the episode, and that's where I kind of used it. Anyways, what you want to do is get a good amount of olive oil in your pan, like something that would be around 1 tablespoon worth maximum, because you want to coat this really well on the pan. And the idea with this is that you kind of want to coat this up so that you're able to roast, like maybe sear the outside portion of it. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a little bit of a shell, like a casing around it. So when you do that, you do a bit of a crust, and that'll trap the juices on the inside. You're going to have a very crispy outside, but your interior is going to be super tender. That's the key to that. Now that I have that out of the way, I'm putting this up to medium-high heat to be able to warm it up. Then we're just going to brown this up for a few minutes on all sides. Once that's done, we're going to transfer it to the slow cooker.
Walking
Okay, so I kind of learned my lesson right now. I was using these silicone tongs to be able to get the beef out, but it didn't seem like it was strong enough, so it was too flexible. I had to wash my metal ones I usually use for barbecuing. That one has enough give for that. But whatever the case, what I did was I browned it up just enough. Eventually I did put the heat to medium low because I was afraid that at medium high, because I was used to some other pans that don't heat up as quickly, that would have actually burnt the crispiness of this, and you don't want to burn it too much. You just want to brown it nicely so that once again you create little crusts that could trap the juices. So then once that's done and you cut the heat, it's probably going to take like maybe 10 minutes tops to do that. You just take your roast and then you shove it into the slow cooker over here. Just like so. And depending on who you would ask, in fact, there's a lot of other recipes you find where you could take some other vegetables, like you could take carrots, onion, pepper, turnip, you could add some potatoes in there too, and then what that's going to do is that as the juices are stewing over here in the meat, it's also going to stew in the rest of the vegetables. So you basically have a nice all-around roast that you can do, like something very hearty for the winter time. But for my purposes, I'm just going to be doing the roast on its own. But there's one more ingredient that I'm going to be using too to be able to get that done. So this is something that Dave in the comment section has told me about when he does lamb roast. He likes to use some red wine for his cooking in that, because when you combine that with the juices, it does give a nice flavor. And I have made mention before about wine when you're cooking with that. And once again, you can click on the link on the top right corner to rewatch my Milanese risotto recipe, because I do cover that as well in there. I use white wine because it was just vegetables, rice, and plain stuff. That is a very light flavor that goes well, but red grapes and red wine goes best with meat. And once again, you don't really need a fancy one. You just need to get, I would say like maybe a good half a cup of this, like not too much. And then you just pour it in. So in terms of what you would use in these cooking recipes, don't go for anything fancy at your liquor stores. Just go for something that's like, this says Notre Vin Maison, or our house wine. I wonder if it was fermented in some guy's bathtub in his house. But whatever the case, you just get like a cheap house wine, something that's going to cost you less than 10 bucks, because you don't want to use fancy stuff when you're cooking. You just want something that has decent flavor when you're roasting this up. That's all it really takes. And that's how you go about preparing a sirloin tip roast for yourself in a slow cooker. So just to recap something, you're going to have a low setting and a high setting on that. For a lot of your meats, you're best to use it for the low setting, because if you do the high setting, you're going to do it for a shorter amount of time, but it cooks quicker. If you do it slower, it's at low temperatures, and that really loosens up the fibers of the meat, so it makes it a lot more tender, and certain cuts are going to be like almost fall off the bone quality too. So just to give you an idea, pork shoulder, that is notoriously tough meat to have to chew through. And if you do that in a slow cooker for about 10 hours, that actually makes it really tender, like almost like you're chewing on a pork tenderloin. So you got to keep that in mind. It's going to take me about a good 8 hours before this one is going to be done. So obviously I don't actually use slow cooker recipes much when I'm doing this stuff on my channel, most because the way my schedule works and the way that I time myself, it's going to take like all day to do. I might be going out. I might have to also do my day job too. So it is kind of tricky at times. But when you do use it, it's fantastic. Oh, and I guess this is another good time to bring it up. If you're going to be doing this in the oven, you probably need like maybe an hour and a half max. I'd have to look up the steps again, but that's one cut of meat where you can kind of get away with eating it medium rare or medium, because this is the thing I was realizing. Ground beef that you get in the grocery store is ground up, and you never know, it's a whole mix of cows they're going to be using for that, so the bacteria that's on there is going to be all blended in. The thing about most cuts of meat is that if you have a full roast or a full steak, all the bacteria is just going to be within the surface of it, only because the fibers of the meat are so dense, it's hard for anything to penetrate through. So whenever you do cooking and you do just the top and the bottom, that's why you're able to eat the inside of the meat in a somewhat rare state. I suppose if you want to do burgers then, technically what you would do is, I guess, ground up your own meat and then you just do a medium rare, but it takes a little bit of other prep work to do too. I was reading about that when I was looking up, how is beef tartare safe to eat? Because I love that stuff and I was asking myself, how is this even feasible? Apparently it's a similar process. Because the meat is all solid and dense, the bacteria and germs are going to be on the top of it. So they actually throw that into like boiled water and then throw it into cold water afterwards too. And then that kills everything automatically. Then when you cut it up, you're not going to have any germs mixing in with it. So I guess that's one way to prepare burgers, and also tartare for that matter. And who knows, maybe if I'm really adventurous, one of these days I could try to prepare my own tartare. But that will be probably for another day. And depending on my timing, I may be able to do a taste test of this while I'm having my actual supper. Because it's going to take a little while. I'm going to be sitting here, and I do want to try to get some poke bowl action all set up to go too. So, this might be a good opportunity to combine this as a cooking episode with a small wander episode. Eventually I'm going to have to go get my stuff, so we'll see where it takes us. So I had to start my journey up in Chinatown because I thought if I was going to be looking for the ingredients, probably could have gone to a place that was kind of obvious, because sometimes you will find these over here, and on some occasions the vegetables you would need for it are relatively affordable compared to other grocery stores. Sadly, the two shops I checked out didn't seem to have what I needed for the poke bowls entirely, so that was kind of a bust. But you know, it's all good because it means I can extend my wander a little bit more. Because if I got everything in one shot now, this would have been a shorter episode than I wanted. Because it's nice, I'm on Saint-Laurent Blvd as usual, and I feel like I want to get myself a drink very soon. Maybe start off with a coffee because I would need some energy before I keep hitting the road. Super relaxing. So, this cafe I met is on the corner of Saint-Laurent and Duluth Avenue. I have passed by here before, and I do recall trying this out once, like last year, and when I needed a bit of a snack, I ended up getting a cookie that had some white chocolate, and believe it or not, it actually did have some cayenne pepper in it, which when I think of cayenne pepper, I always think of something for cooking. I've sometimes seen it in chocolate, never in cookies, so it was like a first time for things. It's good, but it's a very subtle taste that doesn't hit you right away. It took a little bit of time for the cayenne to really bite you in the back of the throat. I love it. That's the beauty of these things, is that you walk around, you discover, try something new, and basically you kind of feel like a tourist in your own city. It's great stuff. And I do remember I passed by here like last summer for one of my favorite episodes. And once again, I'll put it on the top right corner because as much as I referenced that one, it's one that I'm proud of, and it just felt fun. Just go along Duluth Avenue spontaneously just because of a good suggestion, found some good beef tartare, good bars to try out, excellent coffee along the way, and you know, That's what life is all about. And also love the music that I used on that one. So just taking my time over here, having this drink. Oh yeah, you're probably wondering what it is. It's an iced Americano. It's the sun's up and I'm on a terrace and I feel like I need to have a cold drink now. Regular espresso is fine, but there's just something about having it iced when you're under the sun. And when you're just relaxing, taking your time and enjoying whatever time you have left on a long weekend, this is what life is all about.
See the curtains hanging in the window in the evening on a Friday night. Little light is shining through the window, lets me know everything's alright. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. See the paper laying on the sidewalk, a little music from the house next door. So I walk on up to the doorstep, through the screen and across the floor.
So I was hit with a bit of a whammy all at once over here. I've been finding sometimes that on Mondays a lot of places are closed, even though today is a holiday for a lot of us. Not to mention too that there's some bars that they only open at 3 p.m. and I was kind of running a little bit earlier and I thought, where else can I go? And can I show off something else that's different, which I haven't done on the channel just yet? And luckily I was able to get a bit of luck around here. On Mount Royal Avenue East, I came across the West Shefford Brewing Company pub. I'm kind of familiar with the West Shefford product too, and I've actually been able to try their stuff a few times. As a matter of fact, I didn't document it, but one time I was over at Les Enfants du Rock. It's like a bar with the whole facade of classic rock logos like your Pink Floyd, your David Bowie from the Aladdin Sane era, Prince, a whole bunch of stuff. It's around here, and they have a lot of the beers that come from this bar too. And I've actually visited this place once with a friend a little while back. Tried it out, have a pretty decent sausage here. The one I had was filled with Emmental cheese, so you can imagine you heat up the sausage and it kind of melts in your mouth because of the cheese. So it's good stuff. But I decided to go for something that's kind of a classic for me here. It's Feu de Joie, or Feu de Joie. Translated to English, it means like fire of joy. I got it because it's the only New England IPA that they have on the menu, but it should technically be a double New England IPA because it's an 8%er, so it's definitely on the strong side. I just figured if I'm going to do a one and done on a terrace, I may as well do a high quality one. Cheers to the long weekend. Very nice. And there was another one I do remember trying and finding in the stores. It's called Montrose. It was a bit more of a sour, fruity one. But the thing I remember about that is that it's actually one of the few collaborations that's done with La Succursale. I don't need to put a card for that because I've documented La Succursale countless times on the channel. But just to give you a recap, it's on Masson Street, corner that, and 10th Avenue in Rosemont. Also a nice little place, close to where my grandmother used to live. So it was all amazing. As far as I could tell, it's the only you could get in grocery stores. For a while, La Succursale was able to sell their stuff, like in the 1 liter growlers. But they changed ownership, they remodeled it recently, and they don't seem to have that any longer. Ah well, what can you do?
I'd like to love you with all of my heart. You had me on your trip right from the start. And when you looked at me with love in your eyes, I knew I'd want you hold you if you want me to. I found something.
Yep, like I said, it was going to be a one and done brew because I knew I wanted to get home and I had another mission to finish off this video today. But had it been earlier in the weekend, I probably would have stuck around a little bit more and done a little bit of a crawl. But it is what it is. So what I did was I continued on Mont-Royal Avenue, up Iberville, and eventually made my way onto Masson Street. Masson Street is one of those areas I've been familiar with since I was a kid because we used to come here a lot with my grandmother, my mom too, and my aunts all have good memories of that, and they told me a little bit about the area. And I have my own things I used to check out over here. Like, what you saw in the establishing shot was Cafe Pista on Masson. I've already showcased the one on Saint-Laurent and sometimes on Blvd countless times. This one I've been to a few times as well. And I have a vivid memory of this one because this location used to be a former store that was called L'Idée Fixe, which is a French expression for, I think, something that you're obsessed with. So it's like you're very fixated on an idea. And what that was it sold a lot of secondhand DVDs, CDs, cassettes, and especially video games. And in the old days with my brother, we used to do these tours countless times to see what kind of stuff we could find around. Like, we found some good collectibles, especially the one that was on Ontario Street around Hochelaga that I covered in the channel before. Sadly, they all closed down because I guess the secondhand market isn't as good as it used to be, but it became a good coffee shop. There's only 3 chains I know of, like I mentioned: Blvd, Masson, Saint-Laurent, but it's all good stuff. And I don't need to talk as much about it because I show this coffee a lot on the channel, and no, they're not paying me for this. I just love their brand. Fair trade coffee, very unique flavors depending on which blends that you get, and all around amazing. This is going to be a good energizer before I start to hit the road. And if all goes well, I believe there's one shop here that does sell the fish I kind of need to do my poke bowl at home. So if that's settled, then we shall be getting right back to this once I'm home with my gear. And hopefully it's going to be a successful episode today.
She's simply awesome.
So as you can tell by the supplies over here, my tuna poke bowl hunt was successful today. So I'm going to be showing you a basic one you can whip up at home for yourself with a few tips and reminders that you need to keep in mind. So if you go online, you're going to see there's a whole bunch of recipes, different offerings, different styles, but there is some consistency across the board with some ingredients that you would be using too. So don't think that you have to follow things to a T. If you don't find everything you have, you can actually replace it with other vegetables or other ingredients. That's the beauty of the poke bowl. So first thing I'm going to do is going to prepare the sauce that I use to drizzle when I'm putting together this thing. So one of the recipes I found online said you can drizzle this with a spicy mayo, and it's a very straightforward one you got to do. You can just take whatever mayonnaise that you want, take 2 tablespoons worth, and then add it into a small mixing bowl, just like so. And I'll clean this up afterwards once I'm done. Then, next thing you're going to need technically would be some sriracha or tamari sauce if you could find it. I was trying to look for things on the cheap, and on my last second where I was trying to get this stuff before the stores closed, I wasn't able to find the sriracha. So what I ended up getting for myself was just a simple chili sauce. And one recipe I found, actually the one I'm using as a reference, said you use 2 tablespoons worth. Thing is that not everyone's going to have the same tolerance for spice. So what I'm going to do, just so I can get a bit of the flavor, is I'm going to use just 1 tablespoon of this chili sauce. That is, if I can get this thing out. It's reminding me of these Heinz ketchup commercials from the 90s, I think, saying it'll come out only when it wants to come out, referring to those stupid glass balls you would get in like diners and such. All right, this is going to take some time. Well, took a while, but I finally got myself a tablespoon of this stuff. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add this into the bowl and then shake it off and then give it a good mixing. Now, if you're using sriracha, it's a little bit more thick than this stuff that I'm using. So one suggestion you could do is add a dash of water into this bowl. So what that will do is it'll thin it out just enough so that when you're ready to serve this, you can use this to kind of just sprinkle it on and drizzle it onto your poke bowl. So it's going to have a bit of a pink complexion on here, which is what you want. So just keep stirring it until it's all consistent. Yep. Smells like a hot mayonnaise. Not too spicy, I hope. And we're good to go with that. So next thing I'm waiting for is for my tuna. But before I can get that, I know there's one more ingredient that I need to have before I get all this done. Yep. I knew that with the end of the long weekend, I'm going to have to try out one more brew just to wrap things up properly. So I've had this one in my fridge for a little while that I've been saving for just such an occasion, from the fermenter located in l'Assomption. Oh, actually, there's another one over in the Repentigny. So yeah, all these things are like outside of the Montreal region. And it's a funny one. It's a Pilsner. It's called Anti-Sobriety. I could say it's a beer on lees, about 4.8%. And it's a Pilsner. Like, I'm looking at this cover here. And you see this. It's like, is this supposed to be like a heavy metal style? It's like, I don't know. Very vulgar looking, very punkish. I feel like if there was any more gore on here, then we'd be getting a Cannibal Corpse album cover. But when I see things that say beer on lees, the first thing I think about is Brassa RJ. They're the ones that make Belle Gueule, but they have their other artisanal line. And Unibrew. Unibrew also has one of those that's like beers on lees. And I've mentioned this countless times on the channel, but you drink their stuff, like their blonde, their white, their Saison, their IPA, they all have a consistent taste across the board. So it's like lees gives that consistency. I guess that's one way of keeping continuity, you know, conceptual continuity, like your Frank Zappa. So, let's get up. That's as much as I can cheers you right now. Okay, not bad. It does have a lees taste, but it tastes like very light without losing the flavor, which is key. Sometimes I find if you have a very light beer, you risk losing the flavor and you're basically drinking water. So this is good. I'm gonna get the mayo put aside, check on my tuna, and then I'll explain the rest of the process, which I'm looking forward to. So you saw that I was preparing a few green onions, some cucumber. That's going to give you a hint of what I'm going to be preparing for the rest of this dish. But I got to get to the important part now. We have arrived at the tuna. So this is the pièce de résistance when you're making a poke bowl. So traditionally it's going to be tuna that's put in these, but you could also do salmon too, and it's also going to be kind of awesome. But if you're going to be doing this at home, there's a key thing you got to remember, and this is the trick. So when you're going to be buying your tuna, you got to make sure it's a very vibrant kind of pink, not a transparent pink, and especially not a white tuna. White tuna is usually what they use in cans. And you also have to make sure that what you're looking for is sashimi or sushi grade salmon or tuna. And there's a reason for that too. I wasn't sure exactly what it was supposed to imply, but apparently the process is when they catch any kind of fish that's going to be used in sushi, they flash freeze it. That way, any kind of bacteria, germs, parasites, or whatever else are in there are going to die instantly. That's how you're going to be knowing that it's acceptable to be consuming that. don't just use any tuna that you find in the store or any fish, because some of those will still have parasites in there, and you're definitely gonna wanna have to cook that fully. The idea with a poke bowl, poke means raw fish. So that's kind of the trick to that thing. And yeah, you're probably thinking to yourself like, okay, this smells fine. This is another hint too. You'll know that you have good fish if it smells, let's say, like the ocean. If it smells too fishy, it's probably not good enough, so keep away from it. So you're probably thinking like, I'm talking about poke bowls and I'm talking about sushi grade, so if you're like me, you would think this is actually a Japanese dish. Well, this is actually something that comes from Hawaii. The reason that you might find in some Japanese restaurants like sushi places is because a lot of your ingredients are going to be very similar, so it's almost a way of diversifying their meals and including something else. So that's that disclaimer out of the way. That's why if you're looking for a sushi grade fish for a poke bowl, that's why it's interchangeable. So on that note, I have around 1 pound of sushi grade tuna here. Most grocery stores are going to be selling this like frozen. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to thaw it out with time to be able to use it first. So typically the way that you make this thaw out, there's a couple of options. I read that you can actually use the microwave for that, but problem is you're going to probably partially cook it. You're going to change the texture, taste, and the quality. So that's almost like a last resort, only if you really feel like you got to cook it quick. I mean, you want to prepare it quick. You can also put it in the fridge for a bit, which could take a good couple of hours for it to really thaw out. Or you can just run under some cold water. Like, keep it sealed up, put it in a bowl full of water, make sure it's all submerged, put it in your fridge too, and then that's gonna help. That's actually a trick that I used for my calamari that I did like almost a year and a half ago, I would say, which is hard to believe it's already been a year and a half since I show off that recipe online. Whatever the case, there's multiple options. Me, for some reason they say don't thaw this off when it's vacuum packed. I don't quite understand, because other ones I've seen say it could be kept in the vacuum pack, just submerged in water for X amount of time. But I guess everything is relative. And that's all that preamble I can get out of the way. So once you have your tuna in the bowl, you're gonna start to dress it up. So a typical thing I've seen across a few recipes are sesame seed oil. That's actually something pretty common in a lot of like Asian cuisines or even some like Hawaiian cuisines. And you're really gonna only need around 1 tablespoon worth. I might as well shake it off because there's barely anything left in here that I could use for a recipe. So throw that in. Yeah, you know, I actually prepared for this because in case I didn't have enough for a full tablespoon, I did have a bottle I meant to open up too. Then we're gonna go for some soy sauce. I've also seen rice vinegar used too, but I'm just going with basic ingredients I could find anywhere. So you're gonna need like maybe around 2 tablespoons worth. I'm gonna go like for a little bit less than that because there's no set rule they gotta use that. There, that's set up. Then the last ingredient is gonna be what they call scallions online. A scallion is nothing more than green onions. So you just do that, add it in, and there you go. Oh yes, I almost forgot. I have a ½ teaspoon here, so if you want something that's a bit of spicy, I'm gonna use the freaking chili sauce again. And luckily this time I only need like maybe ½ teaspoon worth as opposed to a full tablespoon, so I'm not gonna be killing myself over the Jeopardy theme again. There we go. So that's it. Once again, you're gonna find a lot of other variations, but this is like a very basic one you could do. So what you do then is you just mix it all up. There. Just like so. There we go. So that's probably hard to see on camera, but this is what your tuna is going to be looking like here. So then once that's all blended in and mixed up, keep it aside, and then you can get to the final steps. So I talk about sushi and poke all together like they're interchangeable. Something I do also remember too is that around the 2000s, that's when a lot of sushi shops have come and like popped up everywhere. Like they're almost like a dime a dozen. Kind of like when you see a McDonald's or a Starbucks in certain parts of the neighborhood, like they're everywhere to find. Poke bowl places did pop up like sometime in the 2010s, but somehow I actually missed out on that. The only reason I first discovered this kind of dish is because I was dating someone who was a huge fan of these, like this was her favorite dish. And when she introduced me to this, I thought, okay, this isn't so bad at all. Didn't have it for a little while, and then I revisited, like, I want to say it was last year, during the jazz festival, when I was stopping off at the Sésame. That's the French word for sesame, which is an Asian restaurant. And that's actually when I started to have it again. And I kind of enjoyed it from time to time at these restaurants. Funny thing is that it's one of those dishes I thought, I'm not going to be making this at home, so I may as well treat myself. But I'm kind of getting adventurous. I thought, you know what? Why not? Let's get to this. So, once your sushi is all done, here I am talking about sushi again. Once your salmon is all done, once you have your spicy mayo, you just have to prepare your dish. So what I have here is a bit of short grain rice that I put together. I actually pre-cooked this ahead of time just so I had less to worry about. So you need something like short grain rice, sushi rice. I got Cal Rose rice, which after buying that I was wondering, like, is this the same kind of rice that you use for risotto? I wouldn't be able to tell you, but it looked like it was short grain in the store compared to the long grain rices, so I thought, I'm gonna take it. Now, the way I did is, like, for every 1 cup of rice, I do 2 cups of water. They also said 2.5 cups on the package, but sometimes I've learned you don't always follow the instructions. Basmati says 2 cups of water for 1 cup of rice. I do 1.5 cups because it makes it stickier. Anyways, you take it, put it into a nice bowl, and then you press it all down. Just like so. Probably gonna have a bit of extra for later on, but that's fine. So that's all good to go. Flattened up. I'll just put these chopsticks in here, because yes, I do want to be authentic with this. Then I'm gonna keep this aside. And next thing I'm gonna do, well, here's the thing. Once you have your rice, once you have your poke, anything else you put in there is only limited to your imagination. So you go to poke places, you're gonna find cucumber, avocado, carrot, cabbage, like just about anything. I even got mine with some arugula added into it, so I thought, why not? And in fact, I do have some spinach that's in here that I gotta finish before it goes bad. So I'm gonna add my own personal touch. Spinach in the poke bowl. Yep, better to use this instead of wasting your resources. So that's that. Next, you would need like maybe around a cup of sliced cucumbers, which you saw me putting together earlier. There we are. And then something else you could even do too are sliced carrots or even shredded carrots. So I'm thinking of doing that too. Get these end pieces off. And then I'll take care of it afterwards. But then I'm just going to peel this and then add it into the bowl. And yes, you're probably looking at this and thinking, whoa, 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 aren't you supposed to be peeling the carrots before you slice it? Well, that's the thing. Most people are going to peel it for aesthetic reasons or because it looks kind of nasty. But if you can eat a potato skin, if you can eat apple skin, even with their faults, it's fine. From what I remembered, carrots are only going to have a little bit of a bitterness on the outside, on the skin, but otherwise it's perfectly edible. So no use in letting it go to waste. There. You can add as much or as little as you want. Again, there's no rules for a poke bowl. It's very, that's the thing, is it's a very versatile dish. So like that. Keep this aside for later on. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take maybe around, I would say like maybe a quarter of this tuna and then just put it on top. Give or take. I'll just give myself a little bit more. And I'm trying to be generous with this because I do not want this to go to waste. If you want to know if it's going to go to waste or not, well, once you thaw out your tuna, it's usually best to use it the same day, but you can kind of get away with keeping it in your fridge for 48 hours and then it's still going to be edible. So that means that right now it's around 7-something p.m. over here, which means by 7 p.m. on Wednesday, I'm going to have to get this put to use. Okay, now next, 1 avocado. I love avocados when I get this in poke bowls, but fuck, it feels like it's such a pain in the ass to have to put together. So I'm going to try to peel this. And then see if I can actually get it sliced up properly. Funny. Avocados aren't something I really bought a lot when I was growing up, but I did enjoy it when my aunt would make some guacamole for her at her place. And I know I had a friend who brought some kind of a shrimp dish, mixed with some sliced avocado, and then with a spicy mayo and whiskey sauce, which I thought was kind of awesome. So on occasion, I do like to put this to good use. The only problem is, like I said, peeling is going to take some time. But as you're going to see here, the part that takes the longest to prepare is thawing your tuna and also making your rice. This rice took me about 35 minutes to cook with the given measurements, but then once you do that, you really just throw everything into the bowl and then it's all set to go. So it's almost like having a fresh salad, I would say. There. We're getting there. I don't think I'm going to use the whole avocado in here. I'm just going to slice up what I need for my dish because I am kind of hungry. Then figure it out later on. On second thought, I'm kind of getting to the end eventually, so it's like, what's a few extra seconds to peel this thing off? There. Gotta love a paring knife. All right. Time to kind of clear out some space here. And I gotta work with convenience given the fact that I am working with limited space. So in this case, I'm gonna put, let's say, one-quarter of an avocado should get the job done then. And hopefully it's not gonna be too much of a trouble to get it off its pit. Screw it. If I could get half of it, I'm going to put the full half in here then. I'm not going to struggle just to get a quarter in a precise amount. Okay, there we go. Okay, that was easier than I expected. Now, I'm getting to the end, so there. I got one half of an avocado, which I'm going to put in here. There we are. That's done. So then you're just going to have to worry about your final ingredients. So then this is where your spicy mayo is going to come into play. Just take this. You can then just drizzle it on top. Some people would have like a squirting bottle so that when they're ready to eat it, they're able to squeeze it on top. Me, I'm just sprinkling the best I can. So that's good to go. And then you could do some other final touches. You can cut some extra green onions. You can add some sesame seeds. Some would say that you could use black sesame seeds, probably just for distinguishing the color, but I only have regular white sesame seeds, so that's gonna have to get my job done. And there's no set amount once again, because you just do what you want to do with this. And there we are here. Okay, I should probably close this off so I don't get any bugs in here. And don't want to lose a carrot. So I think I'm going to do then, throw a few other green onions in here, and then voila. Now before I do the taste test, first I'm going to want to take a picture so I can put it on Instagram. That way people can see you can do this from start to finish. There we go, everybody. Now time for the taste test, and hopefully this thing goes out well. Oh yeah, so if you want to see, this is your final result. A really high quality poke bowl all together in your own house. And you could probably do this at a fraction of the cost compared to what you get in the stores. As for the tuna, oh yes, well, that's pretty nice. Take note too that I'm using the chopsticks like I would in a restaurant. Amazing. It's quite an awesome episode. I hit 150 subscribers this weekend. Got a beef roast all put together, did a fine wander around the city, got some poke stuff, showed off another brew, and put together a poke bowl from start to finish. Fine way to get the long weekend wrapped up. So everyone, oh, lost me avocado. So thanks for watching this latest edition of the Wanayuki Cheese Cafe, one of my more ambitious episodes I've done in a while. So if you like what you see, just be sure to hit that subscribe button below. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoy my antics, my wanders, storytellings, and my sense of discovery. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, leave in the comments section. I'm going to see how I can incorporate it. Till then, take care. Happy week, because the weekend's already over.